My parents always spoiled my sister, paid for her wedding, house, and car, while I got nothing. Then Grandma passed and left me her entire $2.3 million estate, cutting them all out. Now they're furious, threatening to sue me. I manipulated a dying woman. Hello Reddit I plus here. My name is Ryan Calloway. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood the limits of disappointment. I thought being the forgotten child in my family was something I had accepted, something I had made peace with. But that was before the inheritance, before the screaming phone calls, before the lawsuits, and before I became the villain in my parents' favorite story. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood just outside Charleston, South Carolina. My father, Peter, worked in insurance. My mother, Denise, was a school librarian. They were proud of being simple people, the kind who believed in hard work and Sunday dinners. But somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing me as their son and started seeing me as the shadow of someone brighter. That someone was my sister, Melanie, 3 years older, perfect since birth, the golden child. She was loud, charming, and magnetic in every way I wasn't. Teachers loved her. Neighbors adored her. My parents? They worshipped her. When I got good grades, it was expected. When Melanie brought home a B, they treated it like a national holiday. I can still remember my mother's voice when she said, "You should try to be more like your sister." It became the family motto, carved into every memory I have of my childhood. By the time Melanie turned 16, she had a shiny red convertible waiting in the driveway. "She needs it for school and cheerleading practice," my dad said. I turned 16 2 years later and got a beater, a dented, smoke-spewing pickup that barely survived the drive to my community college. When Melanie announced she wanted to study interior design in New York, my parents drained half their savings to send her there. "It's an investment," my mom said proudly. 2 years later, when I got accepted into a film program in Atlanta, they told me college was overrated and that I should learn a real trade. So I did. I became a history teacher. Not glamorous, not flashy, but honest work. I built my own life, far from the shadow of their expectations. Still, some part of me kept hoping. Maybe one day they'd see me, really see me. That never happened. Melanie got married at 28. My parents paid for everything. A lakeside wedding with a string quartet and a catered dinner for 200 guests. I remember standing there in my wrinkled suit, watching my dad beam at her like he'd just handed the world to his princess. 2 years later, when I got engaged to Hannah, my longtime girlfriend, my parents offered us $3,000 for the wedding, to help out a little. Melanie's wedding cost them close to $50,000. When I mentioned the difference, my mother smiled like I'd missed the point. "Your sister married well," she said. "We wanted to make it special for her." Special. That word stuck with me like a splinter. They bought Melanie and her husband a house, paid for her SUV, covered half the renovation when she decided she wanted a home office. Meanwhile, Hannah and I rented a tiny duplex near the high school where I worked, saving every spare dollar we could. My parents visited once, just once, and my mother looked around before saying, "At least it's cozy." If it weren't for my grandmother, I think I would have cut them off years ago. Her name was Margaret Avery, and she was everything my parents weren't. Blunt, witty, and fiercely fair. She'd been a nurse for 40 years and raised my mom alone after my grandfather passed. Grandma Margaret was the only person who ever made me feel seen. She came to my games, remembered my students' names when I told her stories, and never once compared me to my sister. Whenever I visited her, and I did often, she'd pour us both a cup of tea, turn on her old record player, and tell me about her life. Melanie, on the other hand, barely showed up. Too busy, too tired, too important. About 2 years ago, Grandma's health started to fade. Congestive heart failure, the kind of illness that comes quietly and stays like an unwelcome guest. I started driving down every weekend to check on her. Sometimes after 12-hour teaching days, I'd fix her leaky faucet, organize her medication, take her to appointments. Sometimes we'd just sit together, holding hands, saying nothing. One night, out of nowhere, she said, "Ryan, I've been changing my will." I blinked. "Grandma, you don't have to tell me that." "Oh, I do," she said with that sharp smile of hers. "Because I know how your mother and sister think. I know how they treated you. I've been around long enough to know who shows up and who doesn't." I told her she didn't owe me anything, that I was happy just to have her. But Grandma Margaret didn't take kindly to being told what to do. She waved me off. "I'm not rewarding you," she said. "I'm acknowledging you." 6 months later, she passed away in her sleep, peacefully, quietly. I was the one who found her. I'd stopped by with flowers and a bag of her favorite lemon scones. The funeral was small, her request. I gave a eulogy. Melanie cried loudly, but I noticed she never once looked at the coffin. 2 weeks later, we gathered at Patterson and Ames Law, the attorney's office handling her estate. I expected a small inheritance, maybe her car, maybe some savings. Nothing major. But when the lawyer began reading, my world stopped spinning. I, Margaret Louise Avery, being of sound mind and clear intention, leave my entire estate to my grandson, Ryan Calloway. Everything. Her house, worth around $900,000, her savings, investments, jewelry, and over $1.4 million. All of it. To me, the only thing she left my mother was a set of china plates. I could hear the silence crackle. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's face drained of color. Melanie's hand clutched the table like she was trying to anchor herself. Then the lawyer read the letter. To my daughter Denise and granddaughter Melanie, I hope this decision forces you to reflect on the difference between love that visits and love that stays. Ryan showed me kindness without cameras, loyalty without reward, and love without conditions. I will not apologize for recognizing that my mother gasped. Melanie muttered, "This is insane." Then my father leaned forward, his voice trembling with rage. You manipulated her. You took advantage of a dying woman. That was the first of many accusations. Over the next weeks, my phone became a war zone. My parents demanding I do the right thing. Melanie screaming that I'd stolen her future. Extended relatives whispering that I'd tricked an old woman. They threatened to sue. They even showed up at my door once, pounding until Hannah called the police. I offered to share some of it. Not all, but enough to help. They refused. We don't want your charity, my mother said. We want justice. Justice, that's what she called it. They went through with the lawsuit. It lasted months. Their lawyer tried to prove I'd influenced Grandma Margaret, that I'd isolated her, that I'd planted ideas. The truth was simple. I loved her, and she knew it. The court agreed. The will stood. The day the case closed, I drove to her house, now my house, and sat in her old recliner. The place still smelled faintly of lavender and tea. I looked at her framed photo on the mantel, her smile frozen in that soft, knowing way she had. I whispered, "You were right, Grandma. They never saw me, but you did." That night, I turned off my phone and sat in the silence, listening to the old record player hum. It's been 6 months now. I haven't heard from my family since the verdict. Melanie sold her big house after her husband left. Apparently, money wasn't their only problem. My parents moved to Florida, from what I hear. I didn't ask. Sometimes I still think about reaching out, but then I remember how it felt sitting in that lawyer's office, watching their faces twist with disbelief, not because of the money, but because for the first time in their lives, they'd lost control, and for the first time in mine, I didn't need their approval. I finally understood what my grandmother meant when she said, "Love that shows up is love that stays." She gave me more than money. She gave me peace. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the court ruling. 6 months since my parents called me a manipulator in front of strangers. 6 months since my sister's voice cracked through the phone, shrieking that I'd destroyed our family. And 6 months of peace. That peace, fragile as glass, finally cracked one Friday evening. It was raining. That low, endless kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller. I'd just gotten home from school, exhausted after another week of grading papers. Hannah was at her sister's place for the weekend, and the house was quiet except for the soft tap of rain on the windows. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps. Hesitant, almost guilty, I opened the door, and there they were, my parents. My father looked older, thinner, gray hair combed back too neatly, as if he'd been rehearsing this visit for days. My mother stood beside him, her umbrella trembling slightly in her hand. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice cracking, "can we come in?" For a second I couldn't move. I just stood there, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. I should have slammed the door. I should have told them to leave, but curiosity, or maybe that leftover piece of me still wanting their approval, made me step aside. They walked in cautiously, like strangers entering a museum of memories they'd sold long ago. My mother glanced around the living room, her eyes lingering on Grandma's framed photo above the fireplace. "It still smells like her," she whispered. I didn't answer. We sat down in the living room. My father cleared his throat. "We didn't come to fight." "Good," I said, "because that didn't go well for you last time." He flinched, but didn't react. My mother's eyes glistened. We wanted to talk. Things have been hard." I folded my arms. "Hard because of the lawsuit you filed against me?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "Hard because we've lost our family. We've lost you." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You didn't lose me, Mom. You threw me away years ago." Her lips trembled. "That's not true. We were trying our best. We thought we were helping Melanie. You weren't helping her." I cut in. "You were worshipping her." My father's voice rose slightly. "She needed more help. She had big goals. A demanding life. And I didn't?" I said sharply. "You told me to settle. To lower my expectations, I worked my ass off while you handed her everything. And the one person who ever saw that, I pointed to the framed photo, is gone. The silence that followed was so heavy it felt alive. My mother wiped her eyes. We've been struggling, Ryan. After the trial, people talk. Melanie's husband left her. She's had to sell her home. I could feel the guilt they wanted to plant in me. Like a seed. What do you want? I asked finally. Because you didn't drive 3 hours in the rain to apologize. My father looked away. My mother hesitated, then took out a folded envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. We were hoping you could help Melanie, she said quietly. Just a small loan. She's trying to start over. Stop! The word came out colder than I expected. You're unbelievable, I said slowly. You destroy me, drag my name through court, call me a liar, and now you're here asking for money? My mother's face crumpled. We're just asking for help. Family helps family. I leaned forward. Family doesn't sue family. My father stood suddenly, anger flashing through his composure. We raised you. We gave you everything you had. Everything I had, I said, standing too. I earned despite you. The rain outside had turned into a storm, slamming against the windows like punctuation. My mother stood too, shaking her head. You're bitter. That money's poisoned you. I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in my life, I didn't see my mother. I saw a woman who couldn't understand why her favorite child had fallen from the pedestal she built. The money didn't change me, I said quietly. It exposed you. They left after that. No hugs, no goodbyes. Just the echo of footsteps fading down the porch steps, swallowed by rain. When I closed the door, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, from relief. I didn't owe them anything anymore. Not an explanation, not forgiveness, nothing. But peace never lasts long in my family. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I heard soft crying on the other end. Ryan? Melanie. I almost hung up, but something in her voice, something I hadn't heard since we were kids, stopped me. Please, she said. Don't hang up. I'm not calling about money. I need to talk. I hesitated, then sighed. You've got 5 minutes. She sniffled. I didn't know how bad things were going to get. When Grandma passed, I thought you'd be generous like you always were. But when you kept everything, I got angry. I said things I shouldn't have. I was jealous, Ryan. You were always the better one, and I never admitted it. Her words hit harder than I expected. I don't need your money, she continued. I just need you to know. I'm sorry. I lost everything. My husband, my house, my friends, but losing you hurt the most. For a long time, I didn't say anything. My heart wanted to believe her. My head didn't. I don't know if I can trust you, I said finally. I understand, she whispered. But maybe, someday, we can try again. Then she hung up. I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand, staring out the window at the fading light. The house felt too big, too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you think. I didn't call her back. Not that night. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger when I thought about my sister. I felt pity. And maybe, just maybe, the faintest flicker of forgiveness, trying to find its way through the cracks. Grandma used to say, time doesn't heal everything. It just gives you the choice to stop bleeding. Maybe she was right.